Hey everybody, it's Michelle with Florida Keys Birding, and I have a question for you. What's so funny about the laughing gull? So the laughing gull's name itself is actually pretty funny. It's not because they're telling jokes though, but it's because of the sound they make, which can sound a lot like laughter. Didn't that kind of sound like a bird laughing, right? Picture a bird that's not actually cracking jokes, but just giggling away, right? So laughing gulls are medium-sized gulls with fairly long wings and long legs that impart a graceful look when they're flying or walking. They have a stout, fairly long bill, and they are medium gray above with white below. Summer adults have a crisp black hood with white arcs around the eyes and a reddish bill. But in the wintertime, the hood becomes a blurry gray mask on a white head. And the legs are reddish to black, and the bill is also black. Immatures are much browner and more subtly patterned than adults though. So depending on the age and the time of year that you see the laughing gull is going to depend on how well you can ID this bird and how much they look like other gulls and how all gulls kind of look the same, right? It's really a challenge IDing gulls, but we should accept the challenge just to become better birders. So yeah, and they can take about 2 to 3 years to gain full adult plumage. So as far as like feeding behavior, another funny thing about the laughing gull is their boldness. They're like the class clown of the bird world, always ready to steal a snack from a picnic or swoop down to investigate what you're up to. Isn't that true about the laughing gull? They're just all up in your business all the time. It's like they're saying, hey, what's going on over here? You got any snacks for me? It's like when little kids come up to you and you're like, hey, you got games on your phone? It's like, you got snacks? So they're not very shy about expressing their curiosity, even if it means getting all up in your face to snatch your food. But like most gulls, laughing gulls have very broad palates, so they're not very picky about what they eat. They'll eat invertebrates, earthworms, insects, including flying insects, snails, crabs, crab eggs, as well as fish, squid, berries, garbage, and any handouts from beachgoers. So they occasionally will eat eggs of other birds though not as frequently as larger gulls do, but John James Audubon did observe them preying on sooty tern and brown knotty eggs and chicks. They've also been reported eating royal tern eggs. Not very funny, laughing gull. Not very funny at all. Unfortunately though, the same thing actually does happen to the laughing gull with other types of seabirds. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So, have you ever heard of a laughing gull choir? It's a symphony of squawks with each gull trying to outdo the other in a hilarious vocal battle. Sometimes you'll hear them all together like, "Arr, arr, 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 arr." Like you'll hear them going off. It's pretty interesting. And when you see a group of laughing gulls hanging out together, it's almost like a comedy club with all their squawking and antics. You might be watching them thinking to yourself like, wow, I wonder what's so funny over there. But they're also not afraid to show off and compete for attention, which can lead to some hilarious displays as they strut their stuff and try to outdo each other. You'll often see laughing gulls flying in the sky, standing in groups on the beach and in parking lots. They follow heavy machinery on agricultural fields or at landfills. They paddle in the water off docks and beaches, and they're very opportunistic, like most gulls. They often bother terns and pelicans and try to steal their catch. Look for laughing gulls hovering over the head of a pelican that has just dove down, hoping for a fish to slip out of the larger bird's gullet. But beneath all that laughter and mischief, laughing gulls are actually pretty smart birds. They've adapted well to living around humans and have figured out all sorts of clever ways to snatch a meal or find shelter. So they're pretty smart. These gulls aren't just content with scavenging for food. They're notorious snack snatchers. We all kind of know this. Beachgoers often find themselves in a battle of wits with these feathered thieves, as the laughing gulls will swoop down and snatch unattended snacks in the blink of an eye. So don't leave your food out on the beach when you're going in the water. Put it in the cooler, close it up, zip up the bag, or they will steal your bag of chips. This behavior is actually straight out of the gull playbook, though. It's a behavior called kleptoparasitism. Kleptoparasitism in seagulls, also known as piracy in the bird world, is a behavior where one bird steals food from another bird that has actually caught it or in its process of catching it. In the context of seagulls, parasitism often occurs during scavenging or fishing activities. For example, let's say one seagull successfully catches a fish or finds a tasty scrap of food or something like that on the beach. Another seagull, instead of putting in the effort to find its own food, might swoop in and snatch the prize from the first seagull's beak, essentially stealing the meal for itself. This behavior is opportunistic and can lead to intense competition among seagulls for food resources, especially in areas where food is scarce. Kleptoparasitism isn't limited to seagulls, though. It's observed in various kinds of species of birds around the world. However, seagulls are particularly well known for this boldness and opportunistic feeding behavior, making them frequent practitioners of this avian form of piracy. So, I would call the laughing gull the pirates of the bird world. So, we had on the last video the spotted sandpiper are the independent women of the bird world, and the seagulls, well, the laughing gull is the pirate of the bird world. I have a name for the mockingbird, but you're gonna have to wait for that video to come out next. So behind those mischievous eyes lies a brain as sharp as their beak. These birds may be all laughs on the surface, but clearly they have mastered the art of survival in the wild world of the coastlines. So when it comes to migration, the laughing gull is a resident to long-distance migrant. Laughing gulls that breed in the north of North Carolina typically leave the region to spend winters in Central America or northern South America, as well as along coastlines of the Atlantic coast and the Gulf Coast in the southern areas of the U.S. And birds in Florida will remain there year-round. So yeah, we pretty much always have laughing gulls, but I do start to see more returning and migrating overhead in the spring. So while laughing gulls seem to be a bit clumsy on land, they're aerial acrobats when they're in the sky. You can watch them as they perform daring dives and graceful swoops, all while maintaining their signature sense of humor. It's like watching a comedy show with wings. I mean, the laughing gull is pretty entertaining to watch. It's even more entertaining when they use ritual displays. So they do this to keep order among themselves, and these involve exaggerated calls and movements. Laughing gulls threaten each other, and they simply claim space by extending their neck and their head, lowering them towards the ground and calling, tossing their head backward repeatedly while calling, or ruffling their feathers, nodding the head, and flapping the wings. I mean, it still looks like they're cracking up laughing. So they'll signal submissiveness, though, by turning the head away from their opponents. So next time you're at the beach, see if you observe any of these behaviors. So when it comes to habitat, laughing gulls are primarily coastal gulls, and they are only rarely found far inland. Look for them along beaches, salt marshes, and mangroves, and on agricultural fields, landfills, and stuff like that that are near the coast. Yeah, we definitely have them on landfills. They love the big garbage mountain dumps. It's the only mountains we have in Florida. You'll be driving down the highway and you're like, oh, look, it's a mountain. And it's like, no, that's just a landfill. I used to think that when I was a kid. I used to be like, Dad, look, there's a mountain. It's a big hill. He's like, no, it's a garbage hill. So the laughing gull will form colonies up to 25,000 pairs in size. And they actually are joined by species such as terns, larger gulls, black skimmers, and American oyster catchers. I've definitely seen them mixed in with other types of seabirds and shorebirds. On migration in the wintertime, though, laughing gulls are found along the coast and in bays and in estuaries, as well as in landfills, like we said, and on lakes and a little bit ways inland. So as far as nesting goes, if you ever stumble upon the laughing gull in its nesting colony, be prepared for a comedy show like no other. These birds aren't just serious about protecting their eggs, they're also experts in theatrical displays. With exaggerated wing flapping and melodramatic squawks, move over Broadway, there's a new act in town. Laughing gulls are monogamous and they in pairs, and they often stay together for several breeding seasons. So that's pretty sweet. I actually did read something about laughing gulls, some of them mating for life. So I thought that was really nice of the laughing gull. But like I said earlier, their chicks are also vulnerable to things like minks, herring gulls, great black-backed gulls, owls, and harriers. So even though the laughing gull will also prey on other bird eggs, it looks like, unfortunately, there are birds that will prey on theirs too. So laughing gulls may place their nests in areas like sandy rock areas, mats of dead vegetation, or among the leaves of low plants. They typically look for slightly higher spots in order to minimize the chance of the nest being flooded by high tides or storm waters. So generally both sexes will help build the nest, and sometimes the male begins the process and uses it to try to attract a mate. So males typically bring more of the nest material and the female will arrange it the way she likes it. Oh, so that kind of makes sense, you know? It's like, you know, your husband will go and buy the house and the lady will decorate it. Isn't that how it goes? It's not too much different in the bird world. She arranges the salt marsh vegetation and grasses to form a rim that's a foot across, containing a cup about 6 inches in diameter and about 2.5 inches deep. She may attach the nest to the surrounding vegetation so that the nest doesn't get swept away if it gets flooded. If storms or floods damage or soak the nest, the parents add more material to try to shore it up. So usually the clutch size is 2 to 4 eggs, and they'll usually do 1 brood per season. The incubation period is about 22 to 27 days. Nestling period is 35 days. Their eggs are like brown with black splotches, and the chicks may leave the nest cup at 1 day old. Typically, though, they stay on the platform for several days. They hatch covered in down, so that's well camouflaged, and the chicks are almost invisible. So I'd say if there's one thing that the laughing gull can teach us, it's definitely the art of living in the moment. Whether they're scavenging for snacks or frolicking in the surf, these birds know how to enjoy the simple pleasures of coastal living. Who needs stress when you've got sand between your toes or your flippers and a laugh in your heart? You keep on laughing, laughing gull, and enjoying life.